Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our weekly international prop chat. Today is episode 37. So today we are very special to have a special guest all the way from Hong Kong, okay, and to talk about the best and the worst of living in UK. And as usual, our program will be happening on every Friday, 9:30. So we'll invite different speakers to come on board to share with us their experience and knowledge, or some of their tips when it comes to invest in properties as well. But today we're going to talk about lifestyles and culture, not so much on the property. Okay, so I hope that you will like our program. Okay, for those that who just joined us, welcome to our international prop chat program held on every Friday, 9:30. So do share our program with your friends if you like our programs, okay, and give us lots of supports and love. All right. So again, as I mentioned, we have a special guest today, all the way from Hong Kong. James, would you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, Mandy.
Hi.
Greetings from Hong Kong.
Okay. Maybe a lot of people might not know you. You probably want to introduce yourself, a little bit of your background as well.
Sure. Actually, I was born in Hong Kong, but I was brought up in UK. I went to London when I was 7 years old. And I studied primary school, secondary school, university, everything in London. So I'm a London boy. So I worked in London for a few years before I came back to Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. So I'm into property for about 15 years full time. Oh. And I've been investing in London for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I still have my first house.
Wow. Okay. So that your whole family migrate to UK, or just you heading there for studying?
Yeah, my parents and I went there long time ago.
Okay. So it's not your choice, but your parents decided to get with you. So end up you live in UK for more than 20 years.
That's correct. Yeah, not my choice.
Okay. So do you like the lifestyle there?
Sure. I was never thought of coming back, but the only time I went back to Hong Kong was when I was about 27. That was the first time I came back. Okay. And I lived there, and that's all I know. And I think for some people, it is a great lifestyle. For some people, not so. For example, my brother, he wanted to leave UK straight after university. That was his plan.
Oh, okay.
He wanted to go back to Hong Kong. For me, it wasn't a plan.
Yeah. Okay. So what made you decided to move back to Hong Kong then?
Well, it wasn't like a plan. It was a personal thing. It was a family thing because my mom passed away. So my father went back to Hong Kong alone. So we thought we better go back and stay with him for a little while, make sure he's okay, looking after him. It turned out that I stayed behind and he looked after me. And
all right. Okay, so how long are you back to Hong Kong?
I'm back to Hong Kong for 15, 16 years now.
Okay, so do you still go back to UK often?
Yeah, I go back about once a year, or maybe more if I need to.
All right, so which part of UK that you are living last time?
Oh, I always live in London. I still have a place in London.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So as you live in the city life in UK as well as in Hong Kong, any difference in terms of the lifestyles?
Well, London is very similar to Hong Kong, I would say. But Hong Kong is like on steroids all the time. They have much faster pace. I mean, London is fast, but compared to Hong Kong is really fast.
Okay.
Like, people over time in London, but it's not like Hong Kong. Hong Kong, they don't go to sleep. People sometimes they finish at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the evening. Sometimes even later.
Okay, so it's more like a workaholic compared to the balanced lifestyle in UK, right?
Yeah, I mean, in UK, most of the time you get off at 6:30, 7. That's late.
Okay, so normally it's like if you were to work overtime, there's probably something wrong with you, is it?
Yeah, they're actually in London. They're trying to persuade you not to overtime.
Okay. What about the cost of living in UK as we compare to Hong Kong?
Well, UK is very big, so you really can't compare with Hong Kong because Hong Kong is really, really small. But if you compare Hong Kong to London, the actual rent is actually similar to Hong Kong. You talk about central London. Of course, if you live outside central London, it's much cheaper. I think the most expensive is the rent. But we talk about grocery. Actually, Hong Kong is really expensive to grocery. Restaurant is really cheap in Hong Kong.
Okay. In
compared to UK, compared to London. In fact, is about, I don't know, it's at least 40% cheaper in Hong Kong. But it's different lifestyle. People in Hong Kong, we go out to eat, almost every night. I know people from UK. They tell me the first time they went out for a meal as a whole family, sitting in a restaurant, was when she was like 13, 14.
Oh, really? You mean in UK, in London?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure where she's from, but because it's a custom that they don't go out to dinner in a restaurant that often. They might do it on a special occasion or on a weekend or something. So it's a different culture.
Okay. So what about probably you can elaborate a little bit like what is a decent meal will cost in UK? A decent meal like lunch?
Well, I want to tell you the prices in London and prices in Manchester or in Birmingham is quite different in terms of restaurant. It's about Birmingham is about 25% cheaper. Manchester about 20% cheaper. So if you go for a decent meal in a restaurant in London, it's very easy to get over £100, per head, very easily. It's about £1,000, $1,000 in Hong Kong per head. It's very easy.
But then again, it's like the portion will be quite big, right? For Asians, it's probably two can share one meal.
Maybe depends how much you eat. Yeah, in Holland definitely not. Sometime in London, no, it's not. It's different size. That's it.
So is buying car very expensive in UK? Owning
a car, I think it's much cheaper than Hong Kong. I think it's much cheaper than Singapore because the tax is much lower and the petrols are lower, much lower. Yeah.
What about public transportation?
The what?
Public transportation, is it cheaper there?
Some people say it's cheaper, some people say it's not. But I think because if you're a tourist, they will seem to be more expensive because you buy a day pass and things like that. But if you're actually living in there, you buy a monthly pass or even yearly pass. It's probably more expensive than Hong Kong, but it's still, I would say, reasonable. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay.
But if you do single trips, it's really, really expensive. I actually went for a single trip from London to Birmingham on a train, and it cost me there's three of us. It cost me like £600.
Wow.
Then we hire a car for a whole week, and it's only £600.
All right.
So it's a big difference. But if you plan ahead and if you buy like a month ahead, it's relatively cheap.
Yep, you are right. Okay, since you've been staying in UK for so many years, right? So do you actually buy or invest any properties? Or
Sure.
You have an idea, right?
My first property is in London, is in Zone 2, in Stepney Green, next to Queen Mary University. Actually, I bought it in an auction. We had a whole pile of auction books, and it was after university. I had nothing to do. I was looking through them, and my first house was actually in an auction. It's a very, very small council house. We bought it for 40,000.
That was cheap.
£40,000. That's almost 20 years ago. Yes, 20 years ago. How much do you think it's worth now?
Wow, I think it should be like 10 times more, right? Is it?
It's actually more. Yeah. It's about 500,000, more than 500,000. Depends on.
How big is your council house?
It's just under 900 square feet. It's 2-bedroom, living room on the ground floor, bedroom, 2-bedroom upstairs, and a small garden at the back.
Wow. Okay. So did you actually renting it right now, or
Yeah, it's still under rental. One of the renters rented for 8 years and never left.
Really? So the renting
Yes.
is very good then.
In London, it's very, very easy to rent out. It's same for most of the cities in Hong Kong, in UK, especially in London. You can, one advertisement, you get like 20 phone calls in 1 hour, something like that.
Wow. Okay. So I guess right now your rental yield must be easily more than 7 or 10%, right? Because
it depends on how you calculate it. Because we bought our property a long time ago, but it's very hard to calculate it from that. If you take the current market price now and you work it out, it's not that much because the property price has gone up so much. Especially in London. London's about 3%, something like 3%, depends on where. And if you go to central London, it's less than 2%.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, because the price is actually getting very expensive right now. I mean, of course, compared to 20 years ago and now, I think property price have like more than how many fold already. Yep. So I think you are one of the smart investors. After graduate, immediately go and invest one, and I am sure you will never regret till now, right?
Yeah, I regret I didn't invest it more. Yeah. We have other properties in London as well. Majority have risen a lot. Yeah. My motto is if you stay for a long time, there's no way you can lose.
Yeah. Okay. So
it's very different from Hong Kong. People in Hong Kong, they buy and flip all the time, because the prices go up so quickly.
But not in UK, right? People are buying for homestay, right, most of the time.
I always advise my clients, if you go buy less than 5 years, you probably better not buy it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's more like a long-term investment.
No, 5 years is not long for property. 5 years is very short.
Okay. So you're very familiar with UK. So I'm sure you know where is the hotspot right now. And since you are in the property line as well, so I guess.
Yeah, I mean, people always ask me that. It all depends. It all depends what you mean by hotspot. My hotspot may not be your hotspot. So it depends on what you mean by hotspot. Normally, generally, people in Asia, people in Hong Kong, they're looking for growth. So they're looking for somewhere they will, the appreciation coming up. I always say to them, look for the areas that's got developments coming up, like major development. In London, I mean, in all cities around the world, I mean, especially UK, there's always hotspots somewhere because there's always some regeneration program. But especially in London, there's loads and loads of regeneration program. There's one in 9 Elms because there's going to be a new Northern Line extension. London have the tube, they have the MTR. We don't call it MTR, we call it tube. But to have new station is a big thing. It's not like in Hong Kong, we have new station all the time. But in London, having new station is a big thing, and it will drive that area prices up. So the line is going to be open up in next year. So the areas could be much more popular coming up soon. And there is the Crossrail, the new Elizabeth line. They keep saying it's going to be open, but it has been delayed, I think, 4 or 5 times. And they expect it to be fully open in 2 years, in a year's time, something like that. So development houses along those lines, especially at the end, those prices are going to go up. But there, as I say, there's hotspots in all different parts of UK. Depends on the city.
Okay, for those who are just joining us, welcome to our weekly program again, International Prop Chat episode 37. So today we are going to talk about the best worlds of living in UK, and we have a special guest, James. Okay, and he's very experienced in living in UK for more than 20 years. So if you have any questions with regards to the UK, you can actually put it in the comment box. We will try to answer it later. All right. So let's get back to our chat. I'm very excited to know a little bit more about UK since we have an experienced person here to tell us a bit of the tips. All right. So again, it's like I understand that London is like they have zone 1 up to all the way 5 or 6. So which are the zones that is your own preference that you love it?
Well, a lot of people don't understand what the zone stands for. Do you know what the zones are?
Based on the tube line?
Yes, people think, especially in Hong Kong, people think the zone is actually drawn out by the government. It's like Beijing or something like that, different zone, but it's not. It's also just based on transportation, based on the tube line, how much they charge you for it. Mm-hmm. So some of the zone 1 and zone 2, the very end one, is actually quite far away. So I always say if you go to invest for appreciation, you go for zone 1, for zone 2, definitely, because the demand are higher. That's the traditional thought. But on the whole of London goes up pretty well. Even last year, when the market was, everyone think it's going down, some part of London actually went up 11%. Of course, it wasn't in zone 1 actually. It was in zone 2, Islington. Mm-hmm. I was actually living in London. I grew up in Islington. I went to school in Islington. So yeah. So obviously, from zone 1 to zone 6, it could take some like 60 minutes on the tube. Depends on where. So I always say, if you could afford to live in London, try living in a convenient area. If you can't, even in zone 6, you can get a train to central London within less than an hour, sometimes 30 minutes, depends on where.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it all depends on your budgets and your preference as well, I would say, because if you have a high entry level, then perhaps you can go to zone 1 always. Otherwise, you can always go to like 3 or 4. As long as it's close to the tube line, then I guess it would be quite easy and accessible to everywhere.
Yeah, there's loads of people who will live in zone 6, zone 7, even zone 8, because once they have the transportation, it's very convenient going to work. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But right now in the COVID time, central London are taking a big hit because of people don't need to go to work. So they think, since I don't have to go to work, why am I spending so much money on the rent in central London? So they are moving out of central London.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the rent is dropping in central London.
Okay, so perhaps this is the best time to grab a unit there, right?
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. Depends on the ones.
Okay, so based on your experience, I mean, you've been living in UK for so many years. Any advice for those that who keen to migrate to UK?
Yeah, I would always say depends on what kind of lifestyle you want. I think the most important is do you have kids? Mm-hmm. If you have kids, then you have to talk about schools. And if you have schools, then typical Asian parents, they want the kids to go to the best schools, etc., etc. And there's good schools all around UK, but I think there's definitely more better schools in the south part of UK than in the north. Definitely. There are some grammar schools. I don't know if you know about grammar schools. There's only a few. There's only about 163 of them in the whole of UK. We have over 30,000 schools, public schools in the UK. So it's very, very small percentage. Actually, I went to a grammar school. It was a grammar school, but majority of them are in south, the grammar schools, and especially in Kent, which is right next to London. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Kent has the majority of the grammar schools. Yeah. So it depends on where you depends on where you want to live, and can you afford it. Normally, the south is more expensive than the north, and the rent is higher, the cost of living is higher. Yeah, depends on what you want. And I remember I asked my client. She was asking me, where should I go? because she only been there for holiday. Because she's thinking moving the whole family to UK, but where should she go? I asked her, why don't you go there for holiday? Go there to live there for a month or so to see what area you like. So I recommended her Bristol, Bath, Reading. But she didn't want to live in London. She thought London was too expensive.
Okay.
So eventually she chose Reading because Reading was most similar to Hong Kong, to London. They have this high-rise building and it's very busy. A little bit, it's not very busy, but a little bit busy. So it's similar feel of like living in a city.
Oh, okay. But is this good to live like close to the Chinatown or Asia community? Is that?
Oh, if you like the hustle and bustle, why not? For most people, for most people in UK, especially the British people, is they don't really like it. Yeah, they like to work there. They like to go out and have fun there. And because most of the Chinatown area are one of the central area, the busy area, downtown area, where you have all the cinemas, the shows and the discos and pubs, restaurants. That's where most of the Chinatown is very, where things are happening. But, if you like that kind of lifestyle, for sure. I mean, students, they love living in those areas. But if you are not so keen on that scene, then you prefer not to live there because it's also noisy. And, people don't sleep at 12 o'clock at night.
Okay.
You can still hear people partying at 2 o'clock in the morning, something like
Really? All right. So it depends on whether you prefer the happening lifestyle or you prefer more quiet lifestyle. So it all depends.
Yeah.
Of course, for those single bachelors, they probably prefer those city lifestyles. But for those with families and kids, they probably prefer a quiet area with good school zone, whereby they can enroll the kids in. Like,
Definitely.
so this is probably one of the considerations when you choose a place to settle. Depends what you want, and again, it probably depends on where you work to as well, right? Sometimes Asians probably would not want to travel so far from home to the office, right? Is that such a concern?
Definitely. I actually met a person. She said she want a house or a flat within walking distance to her workplace. She can afford it, but that's okay. But that's one of the criteria. But it's very different from a typical British person. Typical British person would travel 1 hour or more to work. It's very, very common.
So are you saying that majority of the city living is more for expat rather than locals?
Well, there's locals too, but mostly younger people. Yeah, they're living in flats or share flats, things like that, unless they're very executive. Therefore, they can afford to live in very, very nice areas in London, especially central London.
Okay. So, well, then what would you consider the best about UK?
The best place to live?
Of UK?
The best place to live?
Yes. No. What is the best that you consider about UK?
Oh, the best thing about UK? Definitely not the weather.
Why?
If you want the sun, if you want a tan, you definitely don't want to go to UK. I know a friend who went to study in UK, and she told me that she didn't see the sun for 3 months.
Yeah.
Some
of my friends say that it's kind of gloomy every day. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it also rains a lot.
Yes. Is it?
Yeah.
Which ones that it rains a lot?
Especially in Wales. Wales have the highest humidity. It rains the highest in whole UK. I actually have a habit of carrying an umbrella in my bag. And I've been doing it since teenager. And I still do it today in Hong Kong. It's such a habit. I even keep an umbrella in my bag because I've been doing it all these years and I still do it because we all expect to rain. It's a little bit different because we Asians, every time it rains, we'll get an umbrella out. For the Western people, especially the British people, when it rains, they don't mind. They can just keep walking along, put it up. But I always carry an umbrella with me.
Okay, so one thing that you dislike the most is probably the weather.
Yeah, I mean, some people like the cold weather, but for some people, if you definitely want the sun, definitely not for UK. And depends on what you really want. I mean, some people ask me what's so not so good about UK. I would say actually there's pubs everywhere. For us, it's like normal. Going to pubs is normal. I remember a client was telling me he sent his son there for a couple of years. After he came back to Hong Kong, when they go out for a meal, he asked for alcohol, but red wine. She was quite shocked. How come you order wine? He said, "Oh, we learn to drink, in university," and it's very, very common that people learn to drink. Have all different types of alcohol, and yeah, there's a pub on every single street. So it's like in Hong Kong we have a Santan, we have these cafes, little restaurants. In UK, you have these pubs everywhere. This is like a community. This is where you go after work. This is where you go lunchtime. This is where people hang out. Yeah. So you will learn to drink all different types of drinks if you live in UK.
Then you probably enjoy this kind of like bar hopping or happy hours, that kind of like activities. But if you are not the person who love to drink, okay, perhaps you probably find that it's a bit noisy.
Well, people goes there to socialize as well. I remember a long time ago when I was in university, it's very hard to get a hot drink in a pub. But nowadays you can almost get a hot drink in a pub. You can get coffee, a tea, things like that. A lot of them do serve it now. Yeah, because it's like a community thing. It's like they want to cater for all sort of people.
So I guess it's like a mug of beer is probably cheaper than a cup of hot coffee.
Yeah, probably about the same price. Probably a little bit cheaper as well. Yeah.
Okay. So any others that
I
you
think
had your worst experience in UK?
the worst experience probably petty crimes.
Okay.
People ask me, is the crime bad? I don't think it's bad, but it will happen to you. If you live in UK long enough, you will see crime, petty crimes, especially pickpockets, especially in central London. Almost everyone I know, they've been in central London long enough, they have the purse stolen or something like that. Something has been stolen. The bag stolen. It happens all the time, especially for tourists. It's very, very common. And also your house being broken into. It happened to us a few times in London over all these years. But you learn to be smarter after it happens, and you make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's like a common problem in UK, across UK, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised. I know people, they come to UK on the first month, and they had the gold necklace snatched from them, robbed. It happened to them. I have lived in UK for over 20 years. I've never had a robbery. Nobody ever pull my gold chain or stop me to be robbed. But that's it depends. I actually checked it out. London is not any worse than Paris or versus New York. So compared to Hong Kong, of course, Hong Kong is much safer. Compared to Singapore, Singapore, Hong Kong is the safest place in the world. If you don't feel safe walking alone at night in Hong Kong or in Singapore, you won't feel safe anywhere in the world. Yeah. I haven't actually got mugged, but people say the reason why you haven't got mugged because you walk so fast. That's me, I walk very, very fast. That's my habit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess it's just that you have to be extra careful. I mean, whereby you go anywhere. I think in the world right now, I mean, not just only New York and Paris, even in Italy itself, it's like
Italy is bad as well. Italy is really bad.
Bad as well, yeah. So it all depends on whether you be alert when you're walking alone, and especially if you're walking at night in a quiet place. Of course, you need to be extra careful. So it's like
in central London, daytime, they will still able to pick your pocket. they were still able to pick your purse.
So they must be very professional and
Yeah, I mean, especially for tourists, because they're not aware. They think it's Hong Kong. They think Singapore is very safe. They just keep the purse in the bag and that's it. People get it stolen all the time.
yes. Even though they make police report and nothing happened.
Well, what can you do? No. Yeah, I actually seen a video of a tourist doing selfie, and then somebody picked her pocket without knowing, even though she was doing a selfie. On her selfie, she's taken the picture of the person who pickpocketed her.
Oh, really?
Yes, but she didn't know.
Okay.
Yeah, so small petty crime happens all the time, especially in central London and even in Europe, Paris, Italy, all the time.
Okay. So, we talk about the worst in UK. What about the best in UK?
I think the best UK is probably Big Ben, the Queen. You don't have that anywhere else in the world. But I think seriously, majority of people I know who are going to UK and traditionally is for the education. Traditionally, the rich and the famous all around the world, they send the kids to UK for education. And I personally benefited from their education as well. Yeah, I think that's the majority of people, especially if you're younger kids, you consider UK as a good education place. Yeah. By the way, not for the academic examination results. Okay. If you talk about examination results, Singapore and Hong Kong and South Korea probably have highest academic result, but that's not really an education to majority of people. It's not just academic results. Yeah.
Okay, it's more like an exposure and also
the whole person, the creativity, able to think, able to learn, able to express yourself, taking up leadership roles. That's part of education, communication. It's not just academic results.
Yep. And of course, if you were to compare with some of the countries like Australia, the cost of like educations, in fact, compare is probably cheaper in UK rather than in Australia. So that's why a lot of parents actually don't mind to send the kids to the UK instead of Australia as well.
Well, it depends on the level of education as well. If you talk about state schools in UK, is actually free, but if you send them to boarding school, a private school, of course you need to pay. I was told the private schools are a little bit more expensive than Australia. But university is, for local person, is not that expensive. And a tip for you, if you want to get free universities in UK, you can, for local people, which is in Scotland. Yeah, Scotland has very good universities, Glasgow University, Edinburgh universities, and if they accept you and you live in Scotland, it's free. In UK, in England and Wales, it will cost you about £9,000 per year, even for local people.
So should migrate to Scotland instead of
Yeah, if you got kids, if you got 4 kids in going to university, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So perhaps I guess Scotland's requirement is probably as to compare to on the London side is probably lesser requirements.
Less requirement? No, actually, the universities are very good in Scotland. They especially in Edinburgh. It's very, of course it's Cambridge, Oxford, some part of London, and then Edinburgh. Depends on what degree you're doing, but it's very high requirements. It's very, very good universities, especially for medicine and things like that. It's very, very hard to get.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. It's so interesting to know so much over half an hour about UK. So I hope that everyone will have benefit of the sessions today. And
I just want to say one more thing about education. Because in UK system, especially the state system, there's no falling back. If you every year you take an exam, but no matter how well you do or how bad you do, you always progress to the next year. So they don't allow you to stay behind and do repeat. There's no such a thing. So it's age sensitive. So if your kid is 12, you go to a class where everybody is 12. If your kid is 14, everybody will go to the same class which is 14. So you can't say, oh, because my kid is 14, I want to study with the 12-year-old because their academic standard is not as high. They don't allow you to do that in a state school.
Even a smarter kids?
The,
to the next level much faster?
No, they cannot. So even though you're smarter or dumber, you still get the same class.
So regardless whether you pass or fail, they
exactly. It's the age. They go by age. If your age is this, you go to the next level. Age is this, there's no falling back. Yeah.
Well, okay, that's interesting. Okay, so perhaps those parents with smarter kids have second thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's great. So let's see if there's any questions for you. Okay. Yeah, a lot of course there are a few audience that they dislike the weather as well. So I have some friends that couldn't stand the weather. So because like you said, they couldn't see the sun like almost 3 to 4 months.
It's probably worse up north, especially in Glasgow, Scotland and the north. But in the south is better. South we have better weather. For example, snow. London hardly ever snow. This year there's snow, but normally, London has been snowing like this for like 10 years. Yeah.
So anything that you miss in London since you
Yeah, I miss quite a lot, especially I miss the pub. There's a drink in UK called snake bite. It's actually a mix between a cider and lager, and they put a dash of black currant on it. It tastes really, really nice actually. And it's called snake bite. Snakes. Yeah, and you drink it. It's actually very, very easy to drink. But once you drink it, even one pint, you feel quite dizzy afterwards.
Really?
Yeah, this is a mixed drink. The thing I miss most is probably the big green grass, where you can lay on the grass and read a book, something like that. It's very hard to find that kind of very nice grass in Hong Kong. And they let you step on it. Even if you find nice grass in Hong Kong, they say, please do not step on the grass.
Yeah, especially in UK, there's lots of big park, a lot of gardens around, so a lot of greenery. So people like to picnics, like you say, sit down there, read the books, relaxing and all these things. Yeah, I think Hong Kong is pretty hard, right? Even though they have such vacant land for park, then eventually we'll build some buildings, right?
Yeah, even the parks. Some of the parks, they don't allow you to step on the grass. So, and it's just not comfortable. The grass is just not, it's actually a different type of grass. There's not a nice, it doesn't feel nice. That's nice anyway.
So I guess it's also the lifestyle as well. It look like right now it's almost 10 o'clock, you're still in the office, but I think if you are in London, perhaps you are at home already, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, okay, that's great sharing. So I'm sure our audience benefit a lot about the lifestyles, the best and of living in UK, and a little bit of the educations, as well as some of the hotspots like what James was mentioning. So I hope you will benefit from our sharing. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the message box. We will try to get back to you soon. Okay. So for those that who enjoy our program, remember to join us every Friday. We have different speakers to come in to share with us their experience. Okay, lifestyles. We will talk about lifestyle of the countries, the culture as well. Okay. So don't miss our program every Friday, 9:30. So I'm here signing off. Okay, so again, thank you very much for your sharing today. So I hope you have a great day. And eventually, when the borders is open, you can go back to Israel. Okay.
Thanks, Mandy. Bye.
Bye. Take care, everyone.